Federal judges just blocked one of Trump's student loan rules, and this one was not just about student debt. It was about whether the government can turn loan forgiveness into a political loyalty test. The case involved public service loan forgiveness, usually called PSLF. That program was created for people who work in public service. Teachers, social workers, public defenders, nurses, government employees, nonprofit workers. The basic deal is simple. If you work full-time in qualifying public service and make 120 qualifying monthly payments, the remaining federal student loan balance can be forgiven. That is the promise. You take a lower-paying public service job, you make payments for 10 years, and after that the government forgives what is left. But the Trump administration tried to change who counts. Under the blocked rule, the Education Department could exclude workers from loan forgiveness if their employer was deemed to have a substantial illegal purpose. That phrase sounds narrow. It sounds like the government is just saying criminals should not get a taxpayer benefit, but the rule went much further than that. It targeted organizations involved in things like supporting illegal immigration, providing gender-affirming care to minors, or certain diversity-related practices. So the question became much bigger. Who decides whether a nonprofit's mission makes its workers unworthy of loan forgiveness? And what happens when the answer depends on politics? Because this was not the government saying one specific borrower committed fraud. It was not saying one specific employer broke the law and was convicted. It was creating a system where the Department of Education could look at an organization's work, decide it crossed an ideological line, and then punish the workers by cutting them out of loan forgiveness. That is why the judges stepped in. Two federal judges blocked the rule before it could take effect. They said the Education Department had gone beyond what Congress authorized. That matters because PSLF was created by Congress. Congress wrote the program. Congress decided the basic eligibility structure, and Congress did not give the Education Department blank check power to rewrite public service around the president's political priorities. The judges also pointed to free speech problems. Because if the government can say your employer supports the wrong cause, so your loan forgiveness no longer counts, then the government is not just managing a benefit program, it is pressuring speech. It is telling nonprofits that certain work can come with financial punishment for their employees. That changes the incentives. A teacher may not leave the classroom because of this rule, but a lawyer at an immigration nonprofit might think twice. A social worker at an LGBTQ organization might think twice. A nurse at a clinic targeted by the administration might think twice. And that is the point. The rule does not need to ban the organization outright. It just needs to make working there more expensive. That is how power often works. Not by saying you cannot do this, but by saying you can do this, but the benefits disappear. Supporters of the Trump rule would argue that taxpayers should not subsidize organizations that violate the law or undermine national interests. That argument has surface appeal. Undersecretary of Education Nicholas Kent defended the rule, saying taxpayer dollars should never subsidize organizations that facilitate illegal immigration or support what he called the mutilation of children, and that argument has surface appeal. If an organization is actually engaged in illegal conduct, the government should not be forced to treat it like ordinary public service. But the problem is the definition. Substantial illegal purpose is vague enough to become a weapon, and once the government starts deciding which missions are too politically offensive to qualify as public service, the program stops being about service and starts being about approval. In fact, the judge pointed out that the government's own data estimated this rule would only affect at most 10 employers a year, yet they upended a program that protects over 1 million public servants just to go after those 10. That is the hidden machinery in this case. The fight is not only about student loans, it is about whether the government can use debt relief to discipline the nonprofit sector, because PSLF is not just a financial program, it shapes the labor market. It tells people they can afford to work in lower-paying public service because their debt will not follow them forever. If that promise becomes conditional on whether the administration likes your employer's politics, then public service becomes unstable. Every election could change which jobs count. Every new administration could decide that the other side's nonprofits are no longer legitimate, and the workers get trapped in the middle. As the judge wrote in their decision, administrations change with elections, criminal laws do not. That is what the judges blocked. Not because presidents have no say over student loan policy, not because every nonprofit is automatically innocent, but because Congress created a public service program and the executive branch tried to turn it into an ideological enforcement tool. That is the line. The government can fight fraud, it can enforce the law, it can prosecute illegal conduct, but it cannot take a loan forgiveness program built for public servants and use it to punish workers because the president dislikes what their employer stands for. That is not just student loan policy. That is political power wearing the mask of eligibility rules.